Learning English does not have to be boring. In today's video, you're going to learn how I used YouTube to become fluent in another language and how you can do the same with the following strategies to become fluent in English. Now, first of all, we should ask ourselves, why YouTube? Why should we use YouTube out of all of the different resources out there to become fluent in English? Well, unlike a lot of the tools out there that you can use to become fluent in English, YouTube is extremely easy to access from anywhere in the world, and it is 100% free. On YouTube, there is content about pretty much any subject that you could possibly think of. If you're interested in sports, there is a ton of videos out there about sports on YouTube. If you're interested in politics, there is no shortage of videos about politics on YouTube. If you're interested in fishing, I'm sure you could find a ton of fishing videos on YouTube. You get the picture. On top of there being an abundance of different types of content, the algorithm on YouTube functions as a search engine, and it's really good at feeding you content that you're interested in. So it's not hard to see why YouTube would be a good resource to learn a language, but this comes to the next step, which is how to actually choose content to watch on YouTube so that you can become fluent in English. First of all, it's crucial that you choose content that actually genuinely interests you. If you watch content that you're not that interested in, it's going to be extremely difficult to stay motivated and stay interested while you're learning. Learning English should not be painful or boring. It should be fun and it should be stress-free. Consuming content that you otherwise would have still consumed in your native language is an easy way to stay interested and have fun as you're learning English. There's one extremely big mistake that a lot of people make when it comes to learning English. The mistake that is so common is that people try to consume media that is far beyond their level of English. Now, if you're at the A1 or A2 beginner levels of English, or even the B1 level at the lower intermediate level of English, it's going to be extremely difficult to understand some content that is meant for people who are only native speakers or at the C2 level of English. If you try to consume content that is too advanced or too difficult for you to understand, it's going to be extremely frustrating and you're not going to see results or progress as fast as you want to. The general rule of thumb is that if you can understand 80% of everything that is being said, and you have to guess or research the other 20% of what is being said, then you are listening to English media that is at your current level of English. Now, if you can understand a lot less than 80% of everything that's being said, that is a sign that you're probably listening to some media that is way too advanced for your current level of English. As you consume media where you can understand most of what's being said, you are still learning, but in a much more efficient way by filling in the gaps of the 20% of the vocabulary that you do not understand. Another important thing to note when you're consuming media is you should practice consuming media with and without subtitles. Now, if you're at the A1, A2, or B1 levels of English, I would highly recommend that you use subtitles on all of the media that you consume at these beginner and lower intermediate levels. As you get to the B2, C1, and C2 levels of English, I would highly recommend that you challenge yourself by sometimes turning the subtitles off and just trying to organically understand what is being said. Of course, it will not necessarily hurt your learning if you use subtitles at the B2, C1, or C2 levels. However, in real life, if you were to have a conversation with a native speaker such as myself, there are not going to be magical subtitles that appear above my head when you're having a conversation with me. Therefore, it would be pretty useful if you're capable of understanding English at a high level without needing to rely on subtitles. Now, the next important thing to note are the best strategies to actually make progress as you're consuming this media on YouTube. Now, first of all, it's important to emphasize that you need to prioritize quality over quantity when it comes to learning English. In other words, you need to be an active learner. not a passive learner. If you were to study for 30 minutes to 1 hour per day at a very high quality, if you were very focused, this would be much better and you'll see way more results as opposed to studying for 3 hours or 5 hours or 8 hours per day passively. This is what I mean by quality over quantity. You want to have very intentional and focused study sessions when you're learning English, especially when you're consuming videos on an application such as YouTube. Consuming media is great for the majority of your skills, such as vocabulary, grammar, reading, and listening. But if you really want to improve your speaking, you're going to need to use the shadowing technique as you're consuming this media on YouTube. To put it very simply, the shadowing technique simply consists of listening and then repeating what you just heard. So when you're watching a YouTube video, if they use an expression that you're very unfamiliar with or you don't know how to pronounce properly, listen to it again, pause the video, and actually practice saying that expression out loud at least 5 times, minimum 5 times. So, for example, if I was watching a YouTube video and they said, "How are you?" And for some reason, I didn't know what the expression "how are you" meant, or I was really bad at pronouncing it, I would pause the video and I would actually say, "How are you?" 5 times in a row. Just like this. How are you? 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 Just by physically saying it 5 times like that or more, it's going to be extremely difficult for me to forget how to pronounce properly, "How are you?" You're going to remember the majority of the things that you physically do, such as the things that you physically say out loud. This may seem like a really small detail, but this literally makes all of the difference when it comes to how well and how fluently you can speak English. If you can do this on a daily basis, it really will compound and you will see massive results over a longer period of time. Another strategy to use when you're on YouTube is try to engage in English online whenever you have the chance. This is a good strategy to actually improve your writing and your typing and your texting. After you finish watching a video, try to go to the comment section and see if there are any comments that you would like to make a reply to, or you can leave a comment yourself. You will most likely make some grammatical mistakes, but that is completely normal. That's completely okay. And honestly, especially if the video has to do with education, most likely someone's going to come in and correct your improper grammar. Another thing that's important is that you choose content intentionally. Of course, you should be interested in the content that you're consuming, but you need to be really intentional and make sure that the media that you're listening to has vocabulary words, phrases, and topics that you will most likely actually use in your day-to-day life. So for example, if you're a doctor, you should be consuming some media that has vocabulary that is based around the field of medicine. By learning vocabulary words in the medical industry, you will actually be able to apply them in real life situations as a doctor. And finally, you want to make sure your YouTube algorithm is full of English content. If you still want to consume content in your native language too, I suggest that you just create a new YouTube account and only watch English media from that particular YouTube account. Now, there's a lot of content out there that you could consume, but I would only recommend that you consume about 3 different styles of content. You should be consuming content that is specifically for education. A good example of this would be the YouTube channel called English with Lucy. She goes over grammatical rules in the English language really well, and it's great for beginners. The next type of content that you should be consuming would be content for entertainment. These videos consist of any type of entertainment that you enjoy consuming, whether it's sports, stand-up comedy, or anything else that you could possibly imagine. And then finally, you should be consuming content that is actually relevant to your particular lifestyle, as we discussed before. So if you're a doctor, you should just be keeping up with some news regarding the medical industry. Or if you're an athlete, you can keep up with some news regarding the sports industry. Now, if I were to break this down as a step-by-step guide, then to recap, number 1, go on YouTube and pick some content that genuinely interests you and is relevant to your particular lifestyle. Number 2, make sure that you're actually implementing some strategies as you're consuming the English media. These could be strategies such as the shadowing technique, so you can actually train your mouth to speak English, or occasionally turning the subtitles off so you can challenge your listening skills. And number three, if you have to create a new YouTube account to make sure that your algorithm is full of English content, then do so. And make sure you're changing up the content between educational content, entertainment content, and just content that is relevant to your specific lifestyle. Now, let me know in the comment sections if you prefer educational content or content for entertainment. And if you found this video useful, simply like the video to tell YouTube that you found the video useful. That's all for today, and I will see you in the next video.